During this time of year, do you ever just constantly get bombarded by all of these solicitations for charity and think, don't I give enough? Well, I'm not going to sit here and shame anybody into how much you give or how much you don't give or anything like that, but I did get curious at how much the average American household ends up giving to charity. And what's interesting is that overall, about 75% of American households end up reporting that they do give to some form of charity over the course of a year. Sounds pretty good, right? We should pat ourselves on the back. But not so fast, because in reality of that 75%, only about 16% are giving what we would consider significant giving, something that's considerable, which is defined as $1,000. That sounds like a lot, right? $1,000. If you offered it to me right now, I would take it in a heartbeat. But when you break that apart over the course of a year, it's like $83 in a month, and all of a sudden $83 in a month, if you really think about it, doesn't seem as bad. And if it does, consider this. Again, average American household, right? Average American household ends up spending that much money on online shopping in the course of a year. For some of us, we might end up spending significantly more than that. But that's on average what most of us spend on online shopping. It ends up actually being about $20 less than what many people end up spending on what's considered impulse buying. Just buying something because it's there and you don't need it. When you look at something like, one of those hallmarks of good personal finances, eating out instead of bringing your own food into work or in the middle of the day, the average American household spends over twice as much money on eating out every single day for lunch than they do giving to any kind of charity or organization or even just individual people that they know of who need the help. Once you start actually comparing charitable giving to other things we spend money on, that's where it starts getting a little bit more uncomfortable, because we start realizing how little we actually give. Now, I do think there's a lot of reasons for this, and you guys are going to talk about this in your small groups, so I don't want to sit here and pontificate about it here, but I will set this up for you. You see, what you're going to read is something from 2 Corinthians where Paul is talking to the church in Corinth. The reason why this is so important to us is the church in Corinth is a very good mirror of the United States today. You see, it was economically prosperous. It had a significant amount of affluence to it. There's a lot of education. People, by and large, kind of understood things, and they relied on their reason for things. And then you also had a highly diverse populace, both in terms of ethnicity and background and socioeconomic status. And so it mimicked a lot of what we have in the U.S. Well, it also mimicked the U.S. in the same way that just as we have, this nation of Mexico that, has had its periods of being a first world nation, now is not as prosperous as us. And even though we're linked in many ways, they don't have as much as we do. Well, the church in Corinth had the church in Macedon that was not as affluent as they were. They didn't have as much stuff. But what you're going to see in your groups is exactly how Paul referred to that church in Macedon. And what I want to ask you is this. Why is it, do you think, that Paul chooses to highlight the generosity of the church in Macedon, a church that is poor and is far less affluent than the church of Corinth? What message do you think he's trying to get across to the church in Corinth, and what is he trying to say to us today about our own giving behaviors? Now, there was a part of one of the verses in there that I highlighted on that last card, if you caught it. It's there in verse 3 where Paul says entirely on their own, and then talks about how Macedon wants to give, how they look for opportunities to give. This is significant because it's a huge problem that we have in our society today. You see, by and large, most of us will say, if somebody comes up to me and says, I have a need, then we will sit here and we will open up our wallets and we'll say, how can I help you out, man? How can I help get you through this tough time that you're in? And that's all well and good, but look at the heart of the church in Macedon. They weren't passively waiting for people to come up to them and say, you know what, I've already done all the research, I've already done the groundwork, I found out who's in need, how they can be helped. Instead, the church in Macedon, despite the fact that they did not have a tremendous amount of wealth, they were actively looking for opportunities to help other people. They didn't require some personal invitation or, the pastor coming up to them and saying, oh, will you please help out with this event? Instead, they were sitting here saying, how can I help? How can I give? Who can I help give some kind of relief to them through the situation that life has thrown at them. And why is this? Well, it's connected to a very important thing that also comes around frequently this time of year. And that's the subject of thankfulness. You see, these two concepts are connected. You can be compelled to give, you can be compelled to be more generous, but in reality, this sense of proactive generosity is going to come from the root of the tree that is the thankfulness that we have. This is what Paul's highlighting so much in the church of Macedon, is the fact that they are so thankful for what God has done in their lives and for everything Jesus Christ has done for them, that they can't help but want to reach out to other individuals. They see the joy that they have and they want others to have that joy. Even if it's just a temporary joy through having some relief from whatever your circumstances are, or helping you get through whatever you're getting through, or just getting some help with some job or task that you're trying to execute. The people in Macedon were immensely thankful for what Jesus Christ had done in their lives, and as a result, they wanted to be generous. It was something where it was an itch, it was an urge that they had, that they said, I need to be able to share this kind of joy and satisfaction, happiness that I have with other people around me. And how different is that than how so many of us look at generosity and giving? Well, you're going to sit here and you're going to look at how Paul follows up this in the very next chapter, talking to the church of Corinth and connecting these ideas of thankfulness and generosity. And what I want you to pay attention to in particular is this cycle of thankfulness and generosity that Paul seems to describe, and how God looks like, believe it or not, he actually knew what he was doing when he created these constructs for our life, that they work together in perfect harmony one another, and that as we are more thankful, we want to be more generous, and as we're more generous, it causes others to be more thankful. Thankfulness is something that should be a natural part of our lives. It should be something that we can't get away from, because thankfulness is what occurs when we recognize what God has done in our lives and how God has blessed us in ways that He truly didn't have to. You see, God didn't have to give us this life. God didn't have to give us the means to be sitting in the homes that we're in right now. God didn't have us have us be born in the society in this time that we could be watching a video learning about God with other individuals who also love God. We didn't have to have all the things that we have, and yet God still placed us where He did. Even beyond that, the physical things we have pale in comparison to what we have in Jesus Christ. This sense of new life, this sense of freedom, this sense of joy, this sense of happiness that we derive from this gift that God freely gives us of grace and forgiveness. When we have this attitude of thankfulness, this causes us and motivates us to want to go out, not just passively, but proactively to the world and say, what can I do to help the rest of the hurting and dying world get just a little taste of that satisfaction of what it means to have a relationship with Jesus Christ? If that means I spend time with them, I spend time with them. If it means I give someone $1, I give someone $1. If it means I volunteer in an event, I volunteer in an event. If it means I sit here and preach the gospel to people, then I preach the gospel to people. Whatever it is, we have a desire, an honest and earnest desire to follow through with this sense of giving and generosity of ourselves because of how immensely thankful we are of what God has done in our lives. So as we go into the season of Thanksgiving, there's your $1 million question. Am I thankful? And do I understand how much I have to be thankful for? And if I do, then what am I doing in order to share that sense of thankfulness with other individuals? How am I being generous? How am I giving? How am I trying to help this hurting and dying world to feel the sense of relief and contentment that I have because I have this relationship with Jesus Christ? And is there more that I can do? Not because I feel like I have to, but because I have this amazing thing and I can't help but want to share it with the other people in my life. This is the message that we have for you today. I hope you got something out of it. Until we can meet again, God bless.